So, girl, the internet streets are saying that pop music is dead.
Who had been saying that? Who said that? Who said that? Who said that?
Now, I'm not gonna lie, the pop music landscape has certainly changed in the 2020s decade and era. But here's what I'll say. If pop music is on its deathbed, then the new pop girls are certainly giving it mouth to mouth. Y'all get it? Because they're saving pop music.
Yikes.
As you may be very well aware, pop music consumption and therefore pop stars are on the decline. And that's a fact that seems to be contrary to the public's desire for more pop stars. There's always nostalgia cries on the internet begging the music industry to provide us with talent that could match the likes of the pop acts from pop music's golden era, the early to mid 2010s. Well, arguably the 80s and the 2010s, but that's another argument that we'll have in another video. The issue seems to be that the standard of performance, artistic adventurism, and the capacity to create a hit set by Gaga, Rihanna, Beyonce, Justin Bieber, hell, even Katy Perry. No, not that. But she was mother in the early 2010s, girl. Not too much. That standard is too high for us to accept just anything. Well, the cool is seemingly being answered, and overwhelmingly so, by the girls, okay? Female artists are doing their thing. With the likes of Sabrina Carpenter's narrative storytelling and her music videos and catchy bops, Chappell Roan's campy and unpredictable aesthetic coupled with supreme vocals, or Charlie XCX's club bangers made for the girls in the line in the bathroom. Trying to get a line in the bathroom. Take your pick. This year, hell, this decade, seems to be filled with femmes dominating pop cultural and critical conversations. It seems the answer to the question asked by the first lady of the music industry, who run the world, remains the same.
Girls.
These women are out singing, out dressing, and certainly outperforming their male counterparts, but not so fast. Because the one area that they seem to be underperforming is the area most important to the music industry. The sales. Despite dominating in music and creative output, female artists are underperforming on the charts as compared to their male counterparts. So what does it mean for pop music to have an influx in creatively rich yet commercially mediocre female acts and profitable yet predictable male acts? Have women always underperformed as compared to their male counterparts? And if that is the case, why do I feel and have the evidence to support that this time will be different? Let's find out on today's episode of Dragon Balls Deep. For real, stop playing. Hey, homeboy and homies. Welcome back to my corner of the internet, a corner where pop culture meets critical thought and medium ghetto antics. If this is your first time ever seeing my face, my name is Herbie.Revolus. My pronouns are he, she, him, hers, and hers. And yes, that does mean that I wear pants, skirts, pearls, and purses. Period, sir. Period, sir. Listen, I'm so excited to get into today's discussion, the continuous of it all, right? I'm excited to have a conversation about pop culture because I've been having so many political conversations in real life here on YouTube and over on the Patreon that I just wanted to take a beat and a pause. So let's give it up for the new set featuring our culture wall. Yes! Clap it up! I know that's right. This is gonna be a rotating wall featuring pop culture figures or, you know, sociocultural figures who really are impactful to, well, culture. And that's why it's the culture wall. This is the first edition, and so I'm hoping you're enjoying the new vibes and the new stakes because we've got some new things coming for you. But on to today's topic. Listen, I'm just gonna start by saying this. The 2020s decade is proving itself to be one of the most historic and iconic in recent history. Okay, now some of the reasons that it's historic are, you know, not the tea.
The breaking news, stay at home. That is the order tonight from 4 state governors as the coronavirus pandemic spreads. New York, California, Illinois, and Connecticut.
But even in spite of all of that, the 2020s decade has proven itself to give us some reasons to smile amidst all the pain. This is the decade responsible for the record-breaking year of Beyonce, Barbie, and Taylor Swift, aka home to girl boss, gatekeep, and gaslight feminism.
Hi, Barbie.
And in that same year, 2023, SZA, an alternative R&B artist, and Olivia Rodrigo, an alternative punk rock artist, dominated the airwaves, becoming undeniable pop acts. Pop stars, if you will. A title I don't give away so easily, but more on that in just a moment. And it's because of these women's immense success that I convinced myself that they are responsible in part for this new wave of female artists that we're seeing, or this wave of artists that we already kinda sorta knew, but they're definitely becoming burgeoning pop acts. Sabrina, Dua, Ariana, Tinashe, Doja, Chappell, Normani, and Miss Pratt. If you nasty! No, not Kamala. Who put Kamala in the file? It's supposed to be Charlie XCX. Women and femmes are putting out high-level art and doing it flawlessly. Now, to be fair, this is also the same decade that produced Fart by Ice Spice and whatever the fuck JoJo Siwa is doing.
No one has made this dramatic of a change yet. I am the first in the generation. It is very scary, but someone's got to do it.
I think now might be a good time to be honest about the pop music problem. Now might be a good time. Here's what I'll say. New music is in decline, but pop music in particular is taking a unique hit. In 2022, Luminate, the company that monitors music consumption in the music industry, they reported that new music only made up about 27% of the market share of the music industry, with catalog music making up about, well, the other 73%. Now, a song only needs to be 18 months or a year and a half old to be considered catalog, but considering that Fleetwood Mac's 1977 album Rumors is one of the top selling albums in 2022, and Kate Bush's 1985 song Running Up That Hill, running up that road, running up that hill, no problem. Girl, so good. Kate Bush, you put your cut in there. Full-fronted labia. That went number 3 on Billboard Hot 100. So I think it's fair to assert that the children have a cry for something a little bit more nostalgic than a year and a half old music. You get what I'm saying? So I just wanted to insert this Luminate chart that really illustrates that in the genres of pop, R&B, and rock, over 50 to 70, almost 75% of folks who are listening to those genres are listening to music that's 5 years plus old. In addition to that little facty fact, Latin and rock music are outpacing pop music in terms of growth. And I'm gonna be honest with you, country music is sneaking up on the dolls and growing drastically. Now, that has to do in large part the influence of Morgan Wallen and First Lady of the music industry, Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter. But either way, the point remains the same. The focus across the gender spectrum is shifting from traditional pop to pop-infused records, or records that their only claim to pop is their commercial success rather than them actually meeting the traditional sonic experience of pop music. And that just begs the question, if public interest is shifting to other genres, thus increasing those genres' popularity, what really even is popular music if it's not a representation or indicative of the majority of the public's taste? Moreover, what does it even mean to be a pop star then? And how does this all tie into how women are going to save a allegedly dying and really ambiguous genre? Pop star. Difficult to define, but easy to understand. Listen, if you're going to assert that we don't have any pop stars and that pop music is dying, I'm going to need you to clearly identify what a pop star is, what pop music is. I need to know the things, right? And I've watched a lot of the content online surrounding this idea that pop music is dead and that, pop music is done. And all of the definitions of pop music feel very ambiguous and amorphous, difficult to understand, nebulous. So the goal really is to create a solid definition if we can. Now, when you Google pop star, it simply says a person who is famous for singing pop music. Okay. Boo. Do better, girl. Listen, if that were the case, we have an overflow of pop stars. In abundance.
In abundance. Limitless.
Okay. But I think I understand what folks mean when they're lamenting about what we have versus what we had. There's a difference, because being a pop star is much more than just being famous for creating pop music, right? There are levels to this shit. It's akin to the difference between a model and a supermodel.
Do not compare yourself to me.
A pop star's music is impactful far beyond its commercial success, even though the commercial success is one of the contingencies to them being a pop star. From Michael to Madonna, Gaga to Rihanna, and Beyonce to Ariana, we've always been able to mark the moment when musicians transition from working artist to famed pop star, and finally to critically acclaimed pop icon. There is a rarity to being a pop star, and there's even more rarity and mystique associated with being a pop icon. Let's talk about it. That's what people are really missing. That's what people are really craving. A pop icon. Someone who creates a movement around their music. And with that comes commercial success, of course, but also a musical legacy that transcends time and the unique ability to disrupt culture and media with your message. That's the influencer piece. They are the original influencers. It's an influence that lives far beyond the fleeting trendsetters of, social media pop stars and creatives today. We're still seeing the influence of Janet Demita Joe Jackson to this day. Arguably the most influential person in pop music.
He's just an unbelievable legend and such a talent, somebody that I really, really look up to.
Rhythm Nation was a huge inspiration for like my first single went out like a couple years ago.
My biggest influence growing up was Janet Jackson.
When I was growing up, there was no Rihanna, there was no Beyonce, there was Janet Jackson. And she's just a pioneer in the music industry.
When I saw The Pleasure Principle, it inspired me to get into this business.
I love her. Bow down. Yes, yes. She's great.
From her rhythmic dance moves that inspired the nation to her pop and alternative R&B vocal stylings that can be heard in artists like Ciara, Normani, and even SZA. And don't even get me started on the Good Girl Gone Bad formula. She created that formula, baked and baked it brick by brick. Janet's approach to storytelling in her music videos, the defiance in her dance, particularly for that time in which she was doing it, the 80s, that's the kind of impact that made way for an artist like Beyonce and a music video like Single Ladies, which in the words of Kanye West,
Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
It's no shade, a broken clock is right twice a day. When you look at the unpredictable and campy embellishments of an artist like Chaperone, Doja Cat, even Lil Nas X, you can easily draw that back to the iconic legacy of pop icons like Gaga and Katy Perry. But I don't want to give y'all too much on that now because we're not in this segment of the video where I'm going to be giving the girls their 10s. I think for this video, I will put chapters in if you want to rush to that, but you're going to want to stay for a while, sister, because we got to get to the nitty of the gritty. The point that I'm making is that pop stardom is difficult to achieve, and I think that that is important to say, right? But it is also largely about the music industry, politics, and capitalism. Pop icons have always been and should still today be held to the standard of singularity. Sister, what do you bring, right? What are you doing? What are you innovating? Is it innovative? Is it interesting? How are you moving and propelling culture and art forward? Because honestly, when the girls are like, she's an icon, oh my God, slay. What is the standard of icon stat? Because I know that's what you want. That's why you keep casting these words on these girls and these men, many of whom are undeserving. Because I mean, if we even take Madonna, for instance, Madonna was that bitch when she dropped her first album, right? But it wasn't until her sophomore Diamond album, Like a Virgin, that she quite literally shifted culture. Madonna released Like a Virgin during the Reagan administration when traditional values of good old-fashioned family-first misogyny and homophobia were at an all-time high. And obviously, like many people have noted before myself, what was so unique maybe about Madonna's work or iconic is that she used her music to create a sexually liberating context, something that was antithetical to the social and political norms of that time. And that resonated with women, femmes, and queer folk of that time and still to this day. Girl, I'm gonna give Madonna her chance, girl, she's fab. And I think what makes her even more fab is that we still see that level and degree of provocativeness emulated to this day. But it is important to note here, and I'm saying this for a reason, that while Madonna was that girl, there were institutional forces that made her the cultural presence that she was, right? That propelled her into pop stardom. For the album Like a Virgin, her record label solicited the powerhouse producer Neil Rogers, who was responsible for Diana Ross's I'm Coming Out and Upside Down. Boy, you turn me inside out. Girl, y'all just better be glad I wasn't on that dance floor in the 80s because I would serve y'all a moment, honey. She also got new management at the time, right? Her manager then became Freddie DeMann, who was Michael Jackson's manager during his Thriller era. And this is not to discredit Madonna's work. On the contrary, it's to make a point that record labels can back a pop star, that record labels can create a pop star if they really want to put the money into creating a pop star. Can they create a pop icon? No, but they can create a pop star if they want to put the money behind you. That's the point. Now I want to cap this off by bringing it into a contemporary context. I thought about talking about Taylor Swift or Ariana, but please, I've got to be true to me. Hello, Beyonce. Arguably the queen of the music industry, so inarguably a pop icon. Certainly. And Mother's been famous since 1997 with the release of No 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 and her girl group Destiny's Child. You might have heard of them. They're one of the most successful, best-selling female groups of all time. She went on to release Dangerously in Love, which debuted at #1, B-Day, which debuted at #1. But she wasn't yet a pop star. She may have been a pop artist or an R&B artist turned pop star, kind of, sort of, especially with B-Day. But the paradigm completely shifted with a cultural phenomenon that was Single Ladies. I Am Sasha Fierce. That was the album that transformed Beyonce to a global superstar in the minds of the public. And of course, she reigns today as one of the most influential pop icons and arguably living legend living legend of our time and honestly in music history. And so I say all this to say, I created all of this context to say, and put your hand out because I'm going to hold your hand when I say this. When I say icon, that is what I mean. That is my standard. On the cultural front, that is what it means to be a pop icon. It's about an impact that supersedes your individual music output. These folk that I have mentioned have impacted policy, have impacted other individuals in the music industry, hell, have impacted religion. Mariah, Madonna, Gaga, Beyonce, Britney, Whitney, Janet, Barbara Streisand, damn it. And take note of the names that I just mentioned. Yes, one, they're all women because duh. Women just make better pop stars. I'm not going to argue with anyone about it, but we can get into it later. But the second thing is, sonically, all of those women are across the genre spectrum. So what does that mean for defining pop music? It means when the work that you create resonates with the majority of the culture, popular culture, the general population, that is pop music. I know, someone may argue that I'm leaving pop music with an amorphous definition, and that is not my intention. My intention is to explain a couple of things. Pop music is largely about crossover appeal, and the music industry gets to decide what crossover appeal means. Typically, they decide that means folks who live in a particular body. It's the same kinds of bodies all the time, and I'm gonna give you a hint. It's typically not bodies that look like mine. But also, it's to say this, and this is the largest point. Pop music is today and always has been engineered, manufactured, made up. It's a fiction. It's a fiction.
You just made that up.
Cynically speaking, it's the music we're overexposed to by the corporate machine that is the music industry to meet their capitalistic ends. Right? To sell the product that is the artist, to push the services that the artist provides, and push whatever other products the artist is pushing. It's about money. That's why you're rarely ever going to see a pop star who's independent. But definitionally, I will say that pop music is really about music that you can dance to typically, and has a simple structure, right? Verse, chorus. But even that definition is disrupted in a world where Adele, Billie Eilish, and Barbara Streisand have all been considered pop artists. So what remains true? Just as in the 80s and the 90s, being in consistent radio play and on MTV meant increased chances of being perceived as a pop star, a similar truth exists today. The goal remains the same, right? Create pop stars who can sell. But we're in the digital era, a digital landscape, so things have changed. The music industry has changed, consumers have changed. And where talent used to be a prerequisite when the goal was to sell physical records and tours, people aren't buying albums anymore. In the words of Beyonce,
people don't make albums anymore. They just try to sell a bunch of little quick singles and they burn out and they put out a new one and they burn out and they put out a new one. People don't even listen to a body of work anymore.
It's sad, but it's true.
In this era of streaming, hyperconsumerism, and TikTok to charts, we're seeing an influx of untalented artists, right? And it's very easy for the internet to paint women as the face of those untalented artists. Now, this is not intended to be a video to drag men. This is not intended to be a video to drag these male artists. But we can.
We can.
Listen, the cultural definition of a pop star and a pop icon remains the same when it comes to iconic performances, stage presence, styling, energy, songwriting. In the new music landscape, the girls are taking it.
The girls are taking it. Why are they flopping on the charts?
I'm sorry, what? I'm gonna go.
Because it's rigged. It's rigged.
Now, you want me to get into my data bag, don't you? No. Don't backpedal. And I will. Now, I was going to transition into our next chapter, which was going to be me singing the praises of some of the new girls, shouting them out, and giving you my reasons for why I feel like they're doing things that are innovative and are expanding pop in a way that is interesting. However, I do think that it is important that you ask me that question. Thank you. Love you down. Hearts, caboodles. Bow, bow, bow. I do think it's important that we do run through the data because there's a reason for why women are not performing on the charts in the same way that men are currently, but also historically. So I want to provide you with some data. You know, one thing about me, girl, I'm gonna get into the data, okay? There was a large-scale study done by Northwestern University that spanned 40 years, from, I believe, 1960 to 2000s. Now, I do have recent data as well, but I thought that this was interesting and worth noting. Now, at that time, women made up about 20 to 25% of the music industry, but here are a couple of things that the study found. Men release more music than women. They release more songs than women. Duh. But also, men are signed to recording labels more frequently and are aligned with more collaborators to produce their records. So what does that mean? All these factors increase your likelihood likelihood of making it on the charts. From a quantity perspective, you're putting out more songs, right? So your chances are increased just from a quantity perspective. But also, your music has the capacity to sound different, unique, when you have all of these different producers and access to them, or when you have access to powerhouses, which are these record labels. More often than not, these women don't have access to that, and that is intentional. Now, fast forward to today, in the contemporary context, women make up about 30% of the music industry, right? And I do want to look at some Billboard data, because the Vox article that I referenced earlier was talking about women's chart positioning on Billboard. I was curious about qualifying that information, right? What amount of space do women take up on Billboard commensurate or relative to the percentage of the music industry that they take up, which is about 30%, right? So if they take up 30%, how much of Billboard are they on? Are they on only 10% of Billboard, or are they on 50% of Billboard? And the reason why I wanted to use Billboard's data is because I feel like historically and contemporarily, they have the most comprehensive look at all of the factors and all of the mechanisms that work together to make a pop star, to make pop music. They consider radio play, streams, digital downloads, and sales. Oh, sales. A lost art, honey. And then after we do the little data run, then we can get into my theory of why women are just superior in music and certainly saving pop. Hello! So Billboard produces something called the Decade End Chart. You actually have to have a Billboard subscription that costs $179.88. But who's got it? But who's got it? Now, while I am Tasha K to the bullshit,
I ain't got it.
I do want accurate information. So I went ahead and paid the $179.88 and reported it to my bank. Now, essentially the way it works is they look at the charting over the span of a decade and they order the numbers in terms of the songs that were most popular, most successful, in order from 1 all the way down. I think it goes to, in certain decades, like 200, but I only looked at the top 100. So I want to start with the 80s and work our way through up to, contemporary time. And we're going to speed through this because I don't want to keep you here all day. We didn't show up for class. However, we will do the musical research. In the 80s, women made up about 32% of the Billboard Decade End Chart. Almost half of that 32% featured male artists or predominantly male bands, and just less than 1/5 of that were women of color. 4 to be specific. Diana Ross, Patti LaBelle, Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson. Now, the 90s was a great time to be a fan of women in music, or to be a woman in music, kinda. They dominated the Decade End charts with a whopping 54% of the top 100 songs being women's songs. Only 15% of that were featuring men, and a whopping 48% of that, so almost half, were women of color. Now, before we go shouting in DEI, right, I do want to say that almost half of those women of color entries were Mariah Carey alone. I had a vision of love. Now, that is kind. But when you do juxtapose that to the amount of white women on the chart, obviously there were more white women on the charts in terms of a numerical value, and there's no comparison in terms of the amount of men on the charts as opposed to the amount of women on the charts. And that's because entries do not equal individuals, right? So there can be 50 entries for women. I'm just throwing a number out there, but 35 of them are all one woman. Let's talk about it. Gag order, let's talk about the order. Now, the 2000s. Oh, the 2000s. Imagine my shock. Imagine my shock after paying $179.88 and Billboard did not have the 2000 Decade End Chart. Imagine that. Now, Billboard.
Trust, you will be dealt with. Period. But
it's okay because I'm committed. So what I did was I looked at the Hot 100 year-end charts from 2000 all the way to 2009, and I took each one of those songs and I ordered them in terms of the songs that spent the most consecutive weeks at number 1, all the way down from 1 to 100, all the way down to the songs who spent the least amount of weeks at number 1. In this curated list, women made up 44%. About 1/3 of them were songs that featured men, and 3/4 of them were by or included women of color. Now again, don't be dismayed by these numbers because all of this space that women are taking up is only about 25 women. And it seems like there's a pattern here. I don't know if you're identifying what I'm identifying, because I feel like it helps us get to the new girl tea. It seems like people have a great desire to hear from women, which is why they're taking up so much space on the charts, right? Even more space than their population number in the industry at the time. But it's always a small amount of women, and that says something. But before we get there, let's talk about the 2010s and then we'll move. In the 2010s, women made up about 38% of the Decade End chart. About 40% of those were featuring men, and just 23% were women of color. I'm not impressed. In fact, I'm saddened. We've got to do better because we're not trending any better this decade. It's just not looking good, y'all. Like I said though, Even as women only made up 20 and 30% of the industry, they've always superseded that number in terms of their placement on the charts. And what does that tell me? It tells me that people have a desire to hear from women, but the industry is just not allowing it. And that's intentional. I did a video a couple months back entitled How the Music Industry's Feminism is Silencing Women. And I had this to say that I think is important to note now. Spotify, Apple Music, and iHeartRadio, they may be giving male artists more airtime using algorithms that are more likely to recommend male artists as opposed to female and mixed gendered artists. An analysis of over 330,000 streaming music listeners over a 9-year period, y'all, showed that only 25% of songs played were led by women. Their observation revealed that on average, the platform would start by spinning 6 tracks by men before choosing a female artist. You don't find that suspicious? I found it suspicious then, and I find it suspicious now. Even in spite of that sexist fact, even in spite of the fact that women get less radio time and less radio play as compared to men, which matters. I know a lot of girls are like, radio? Girl, please, I get in the car and put on the aux. Hello. There was data just taken in 2019, and this is the most recent data I could find. If you could find something more recent, put it in the comments, by Audio Today. It was an Audio Today report. 92%, that's 272 million Americans at the time, still listen to the radio. More than the 88% that watch TV, more than the around 27% that listen to podcasts, it's the radio. So women in music are at a significant disadvantage on the streaming front and on the radio front. And that's always been the case. And in spite of that disadvantage, decade over decade, they still show up in larger numbers than their population percentage in the industry. That to me speaks volumes about the cultural force that women have and the fact that honestly, they're some of the most influential pop stars and pop icons ever to do the motherfucking thing. Listen, the goal of the music industry is to sell people and products, and they use an artist's fame to create a commercial product, a commercial brand that is profitable. And that desire has become, or that aim has become even more pronounced in the digital industry where, like I alluded to earlier, digital or physical sales are not selling as much, right? So now I want you to not only sell tours, I want you to try and sell physical copies if you can, but I also want you to sell whatever you can. I want you to endorse Honda, Toyota, Pepsi. A lot of the girls have always gotten endorsement deals, but it's become even more important for musicians to do that because music just isn't selling the way that it used to. And to me, it just seems that the music industry has always believed in this idea that male artists, men, particularly white men, are the most profitable brands that they can push. That women are not profitable beyond their objectifiability. That people buy into what they want to aspire to be like. And what's more aspirational than a rich white man? Bitch, I could give you a very long list. I can give you a very long list, starting with Harriet Tubman, ending with Rosa Parks saying nah on the bus. I don't know. However, this is how the music industry thinks, and I do want to get into how women rise to pop stardom and pop iconicness, even in spite of that today, because the music industry is having an enthusiasm problem. Folks are not enthusiastic with this new crop of artists. They give us nothing, particularly the men. They give us nothing. People are arguing and lamenting online every single day that pop music is dying, R&B is dying, hip hop is dead. Something is always, girl, we always at a funeral, weekly. Girl, I stay at a wake. But if they want to some extent, replicate the cultural impact of the 80s, the commercial success of the 2010s, they're gonna need to reel in the big dogs. They're gonna need to reel in someone who has stage presence, who can perform, act, dance, jiggle the thing. And that's not the men. Oh, trust. It's the ladies. Pop stardom. Some things are better left to the girls. Let's start with my girl Chapel Roan. Oh, can we start with Chapel Roan? Queer pop star by day and Midwest princess by night. I first stumbled across her on Twitter in Lady Liberty Drag, where she was advocating for the rights of trans folk. And I said, yeah, this is my girl.
Freedom and trans rights. That means freedom and women's rights.
I think it's the image of a campy mess coupled with a critical message, as the Baptists would say, that really tickles my fancy. It's something I can get behind. Now, she's obviously very impressive because she has a really good singing voice and writes most of her music. And the songs are interesting, thematically and sonically. She's really good at manipulating her vocal styling to communicate the emotion of the song or the theme of the song. Whether the intention is to just feel good and let your hair down or deeply engage with the hurt feelings that you sustain after dealing with that boy or femme, right? Listen, we are gender expansive when it comes to the kind of people who can break your heart, who we can give our middle finger to. Well, guys, this tongue is pansexual. anyone can be cursed out. And Chapel does that so well. Not cursing people out, but, you know, communicating emotions through music. And that takes a level of skill and range that a lot of these boys just don't have. For example, the use of her southern drawl that you don't really hear when she's speaking, but you definitely hear when she's singing a song like, I don't know, the folk-inspired pop moment that is Casual. It's so good. It makes me feel right at home. I'm feeling like soothed and emotionally available. And sad. Is this Casual? Is he Casual now? And then the very next track transitions into an ultra EDM bop that maintains the same level of interestingness and impressiveness sonically and vocally. The bitch is just talented in a climate where we are experiencing a paucity of talent. All that aside, I think I'm most impressed with her understanding of the artifice of the camp aesthetic in a way that I haven't seen since the likes of Gaga, Katy Perry, or even Miley. Well, no, that's a lie. Doja Cat. Doja Cat, who is a relatively new girl on the scene, has a grip on the camp aesthetic like none of her contemporaries. What she does, the girls can't do. Lil Nas X too. 2 queer icons, 3 queer icons. But Doja, another artist who really blew up in the 2020s decade, is an underrated pop act. I mean, we just gotta be real about it. When Doja is on stage, everybody should stop and stare. Get your notepads out. Backpack. Grab the notebooks. Mama's on stage. I'm not your mommy, nigga. Her mastery of modifying a song structure to either match or intentionally clash with the aesthetics or the visuals of a music video or any given performance is so compelling to me. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I will say this, and I think it needs to be said here. If Doja, Lil Nas X were white, or even if Chappell Roan was a man, oh please, honey. Oh, please, honey. The level of recognition these artists would be getting. And I mean, they're all doing their thing. They're all being seen. They're all being heard. If we just want to focus on Doja and Lil Nas X, I don't think they're fully accepted all the way as pop acts. I don't think they're fully accepted and embraced, which is important because we know that pop is viewed as the cream of the crop of the cream, or the cream of the crop. How does that expression go? Either way, it's viewed as the top of the chop when it comes to the genre that has the most impact on pop culture and global culture. And I just think that specifically the way that Doja had the girls gagging for Planet Her, which was a pop album, well, a pop and B album, I think that the girls would have certainly been gagging the house down boots if she were white and a male. Okay, let's just bring it to the forefront and straight, but you know, that's a whole other thing. For Scarlett was dark, it was horrific, it was grunge, it was introspective, and the commitment to that in the aesthetics, in her public persona, in the interviews, the commitment to me. Doja is the greatest pop act of the 2020s. And I hate it because it's like, girl, them demons did me in. Hold on. Please, the blood of Jesus, amen. But I can respect the art. Right? I don't know. I just feel like the people would have been gagging real bad because I'm still gagging now.
I'm still gagging now. If you haven't been to a show, you need to see a show.
Now, to be fair, there is a clear distinction between Doja and Chappell. 1, time. But 2, I think Chappell does camp for camp's sake. It's very clear that she's drawing a direct reference from drag culture. And she wants you to see that connective tissue. It's part Dolly, part RuPaul, part Gaga. It's all of those things in one big gumbo, but the ridiculousness of RuPaul in the 80s when he had the messy wigs, cheetah print, and invisible waist. So good. It's so like Wendy, RuPaul, 2 drag queens that I stan. The intention to me when I'm looking at Chappell Roan is to build a brand that is directly connected to the drag aesthetic and to pay homage to drag and queer culture. Doja's drag, if you will, is so well thought out, but sometimes not. And it often aligns or contradicts the message that she's trying to communicate in a way that feels so specific, so intentional, so confusing, so chaotic, right? There's a sophisticated chaos to the way that Doja shows up as a pop star. That level of unpredictability is not the same as a Nicki Minaj or a Katy Perry, Gaga, or a Miley Cyrus. Doja does it in such a unique package that it's just like, bitch, this is what looks like, even when it's ridiculous. I'm just saying Doja is a pop star well on her way to pop icon stat. Now, speaking of world building, we've got to talk about Charlie XCX. Sorry. It's a Brat universe. I've been seeing slime t-shirts, hats, hot dogs, hell, even the presidential nominee is Brat. Now, trend setting does not a pop star make. However, it is admirable. and it's nice to watch. The marketing around this project is really just genius. I mean, honestly, and the numbers speak for themselves. No. I'm not talking about the first week numbers of her sales. Shout out to her for that. But I'm talking about something that I think is much more impactful in understanding an artist's value today. The media impact value, which is an analysis of a brand or the revenue generated from an artist's post, article mentions, or social media interactions. In my opinion, it's the best way to understand the amount of space that you take up in the consumer's mind or that your brand takes up in the cultural landscape. Charli XCX's MIV, or media impact value, after dropping Brat was 22.5 million and counting. That was when I checked several weeks ago, and that's according to Launch Metrics. I'm sure it's grown since then, especially with her saying Kamala is Brat and politics becoming pop culture at this point. Now, for reference, so you have a framework through which to actually understand how iconic this is for her, Taylor Swift, while on one of the most successful tours of all time, a $1 billion tour, the Eras Tour, generated approximately $90 million in MIV. For Charli to be approaching 1/3 of that amount in terms of media impact value of arguably one of the most commercially influential and impactful and successful artists in music history, I mean, Taylor does have a grip on them sales, honey. One thing Taylor's gonna do is chart, and chart well, indubitably. I think that's an impressive feat for Charli. Now, I will say this isn't my kind of pop music. The fuck? Oh my God. What the fuck? I got throwing tomatoes in this bitch? Is this what it feels like to be ousted from polite society? Is this what it feels like to be J-Lo?
Taylor Swift is a no.
Jason Momoa's not available. Jennifer Coolidge not available.
Lady Gaga said no?
Listen, I can certainly appreciate smart strategy and a cute bop here and there, but the whole body of work is not something that speaks to me. What I will say is Charli XCX's album pulls on the nostalgia that people have been dying, crying, and begging for, throwing up practically, of the early 2000s and the 2010s, and she served the children up just what they wanted, right? That kind of EDM, ultra hyper pop that the kids have been wanting. It's just too much of that for me. I feel like the album is always on max volume, even if I have it on mute. I don't know. There's a lot of instrumentation and or lack thereof. I do want to also say this finally about Miss Brat, because she's nasty. Brat is the perfect example of an album that probably would not have been as successful if it didn't drop in the internet era. And that's because in the internet era, we're very excited to find and cultivate community around an artist, around an era, around a theme. We love a theme. We've always loved a theme. But now, because of the internet, we can coalesce around this theme and this concept and escape reality, which sounds lovely every day of the week because reality sucks. Real Brat girl shit. SZA! Let me tell you something. SZA is that bitch. I could leave it right there, but I won't. Oh! But I won't. Black people been new. The gays been new. The girls been new. Control is one of the best albums to be released in recent history. Certainly one of the best albums of the 21st century. Certainly. But y'all went up for SOS. SOS catapulted her into a different stratosphere. And I love that for my sister. It makes complete sense, right? SOS featured more pop bops like Nobody Gets Me, Kill My Ex, and the song that'll have me sliding down any wall on any given day on any MLK Boulevard, snooze. SZA to me is super influential in the way that a lot of artists approach their vocal styling. That cursive singing, single-handedly. SZA is a pioneer in that space and popularizing that kind of singing and showing that that can be successful. Hey, Editing Herbie here. I want to just jump in really quickly and say that there are certainly other artists whose singing style or vocal styling can definitely be categorized as cursive singing. Macy Gray comes to mind, Amy Winehouse comes to mind, but what I'm saying is that their style of cursive singing is just a different font, if you will. And I think in terms of popularizing it in a contemporary context and illustrating or demonstrating the successfulness of what that could be and what that could look like, I think SZA is leading the pack in that way. In terms of popularizing it. I said what I said. Fight with me in the comments. But here's what I'll say. SZA doesn't sound like anybody else. Other people sound like SZA. So when someone is doing that cursive singing, I'm like, oh wow, very inspired by. Very great value a dish. Do you, sister, but I know where you got this from. It's also really interesting to watch SZA's rise to pop stardom because in many ways, she meets all the old standards of an older pop star. And what I mean is like a traditional pop star, right? Very mysterious, not a recluse, but they're just very art-centered and intentional with their work. But she also meets the standard that, you know, the new age kids want. We want authenticity. We want to feel like I know you. And SZA strikes that delicate balance of, yeah, she's a pop star, but she's also a homegirl. That's my whole world. Down. That's my whole world. Period. We stand SZA. No SZA slander will be tolerated. And finally, of the new girls, because I know we'll be here all week if I just run through everybody. Now we can.
We can.
Now we can. Comment down below if you want a full video talking about why pop girls in general have always been, are currently, and will forever be the greatest pop stars to ever fucking do it. The greatest pop icons to ever fucking do it. We will get into it if you'd like. Comment, do it. Olivia Rodrigo, to me in my mind, is what happens when Avril Lavigne and Taylor Swift have a baby. Down. She initially gained recognition by a Disney Channel from stars like Bizaardvark and High School Musical the series, but her musical mainstream debut was obviously with Driver's License. Red lights, I still see your face. Oh, girl, so good, so good. They had me in a chokehold of the pandemic. It's no shade. And that I wasn't even fully aware of the rumors that might have been about her co-star Joshua Bassett. Now I was informed, and I was like, oh, even better. There's a LGBTQ twist to this. This one's got some sweetness to it. Okay, this one's got some sweetness to it. And then she delivered us Sour. At the time, the biggest debut on Spotify by any female artist ever. Iconic. Obviously, she solidified herself as a pop mainstay or a pop girly. But numbers aside, I think it's her punk-infused vibe and sonics with her traditional pop girl aesthetic that makes her so perfect in a way that maybe Avril Lavigne couldn't assimilate because she was so punk. She strikes that delicate balance. And I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing, girl. This is where Taylor comes in. Also, the Sour album was just really creative and strike that nostalgic balance that all the kids wanted, right? There was the Sour Car Wash and the Sour Prom, which was very much in line with her as a High School Musical darling, right? It just was smart all the way around. And she capitalizes on that nostalgia and those raw emotions in her music and her voice. The girl could definitely sing. Now, I don't want to talk about anymore. I did want to talk about Sabrina. Sabrina has an album coming out. By the time you're watching this in the future, the album will have already been out. I'm likely going to be doing, not likely, I'm 100% going to be doing a review of it on the Patreon. So if you want that, click the link in the description box down below to view it. Here's what I'm saying. The new girls, and I'm going to cap this off with this. Give me a card for the ending of this video. Thank you.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
The new girls are today and have always been the answer to the energy and generating enthusiasm in pop music. Because they have to be. And if pop music wants to continue, it's gonna have to be much more open to undoing all of these institutional barriers and letting the girls gather their wings and fly. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Pop music is dead? Pop music is alive? I don't know. I want to hear you sound off in the comments down below. I love you too bad. But before I let you go, you know I will never leave you without saying this. I am in a constant state of practice. And so are you. You can never fail when you're in a constant state of practice. I love you. Mwah. Of our whole world. Oh, but wait. Here's what you missed this week over on the Patreon. Wait a minute. Why would you say that? You do not know who Josh Shapiro is? Josh Shapiro is the current governor of Pennsylvania. He is the former attorney general of PA. So that doubles down on the tough on crime narrative that I think she needs. Okay. And also, he's obviously from a battleground state. He's from Pennsylvania, which is one of the states that are up in the air for the election. Would I love it? No. But I think it's the most smart, pragmatic decision to go in that direction. You see how Usher is living? You see how Usher is living? Girl, it's no way I could do this without my wig. Hold on. Run it back, DJ.